Hi Gina.
Hi Ione. Hi everyone. I'm Gina, the senior editor of Polyester.
And I'm Ione, the founding editor-in-chief of Polyester, and this is the Polyester Podcast, a feminist pop culture podcast dissecting the discourse on a weekly basis.
Before we start, we've just relaunched our membership platform to include loads of new perks, including exclusive podcast-centered ones. We're now offering exclusive video episodes, secret mini episodes, and even episodes centered on what you want us to talk about across different tier options. Go check it out at the link in our description. And if you haven't yet, please make sure to like, rate, subscribe, and review. Do we have any reviews, Ione?
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
Before I get to them, it's really important to become a member if you would like to.
I would really like if you become a member today.
It really helps.
It really, really keeps the doors open, this podcast running, and my bills paid.
Yes. 5 stars. I love these ladies. Insightful conversations and never afraid to speak the facts from Scooby-Doo Rocks in the UK.
Thanks, Scooby-Doo Rocks.
And then Heidi Hole, lovely username there, commented on Spotify on the last episode about ovulation, saying, love you guys and resonate with some of the comments here. I don't want to be reduced to my hormonal cycle or ever sideline and be bioessentialist of trans women. And I'm not just a girl, but getting off hormonal birth control because I'm so brain rot, fuck's sake. After 8 years has massively changed my life, and I want a way and place to talk about the effects of PMDD, medicated hormone cycles, pro and antenatal shit, especially outside of white communities, without being in the period shack. Big love, thank you.
Love the period shack.
Agree, but for now, the period shack is all we have.
We're in the period.
We're in the period shack. Welcome. And then Mel's also commented saying, surprised you didn't mention those boyfriend Instagram accounts where they discover their girlfriends have a hormone cycle. I'm not dating one girl, I'm dating 4. I always expect the comments to be like, what the fuck? But surprisingly, so many women love it. Yeah.
Blech.
We're in hell.
Well, I'm not being funny. If we brought up every freak that's online, we would be sat here for hours.
Well, it was in the research as well.
Yeah.
We just didn't get to it.
I'm sorry, Mills, that we didn't get to that specific one, but I was so harrowed by the boys that we were talking about that I couldn't bring up anymore.
Well, maybe it's a case of it's better to pretend they don't exist.
If my sword doesn't get bloody, am I a good night?
Gina!
What?
Anyway.
That's what pop culture is now, and that leads us into the topic at hand. What are we talking about, Ione?
We're talking about, is this the worst ever era of pop culture? Is pop culture dead? Are we living through the dark ages? Is something really bad going to happen? Is AI going to eat us all? Why do we all feel miserable? I feel like it's something that we've covered quite a lot in like different ways over the years. For example, the content sludge essay. Is that what it was called? Yeah.
Yeah.
That we had on the Dollhouse a couple of years ago. And then a lot of these things, I feel like we've done like more kind of like
niche pathways.
Zoned in things too. But this is inspired by an article on The Atlantic by Spencer Kornhaber that I think is their cover or appears in their print as well. But it says, is this the worst era of American pop culture? But then we were kind of like running off that as an idea, and it took us back to Twigs.
That's so funny that you're starting with that.
Well, I think it's just a good thing, isn't it?
I wish we could insert the clip into the
I could just do it.
Right, go on, I'll be Nadine.
Where are all the thinkers?
Well, I think they're about, but they're busy.
But not the Scottish accent.
I only did it because I know Nadine's going to listen and be like, lol.
But where are the great thinkers?
Well,
imagine I'm looking to camera. So,
I swear there used to be loads of great thinkers in history.
And we won't go too deep into it because that would also... Well, no, I just think it ties very succinctly. Like, it feels like on many different levels, a lot of people are having kind of like a crisis as to what culture is doing right now and what culture's place in the world is. And Twigs was at this quote from Twigs, for anyone that hasn't seen the memes, is at like a resident advisor conference where our friend and friend of the pod, Nadine Noor, interviewed Twigs. And then out of nowhere, Twigs came out with, where are all the thinkers? And made the internet go crazy. So it's become a meme basically of people being like, well, all the great thinkers are having like a shop job, an office job, like working in Mackey's, like we can't afford to do anything. Like what the hell?
Sorry,
are you
but that
on about?
annoyed me.
Why?
Because it just made me think of like the back in the day when people would be like, think how many Einsteins we'd have if slavery never happened. And you're like...
Right, that's a bit memey and reductive, but also it is true.
Do you know what I mean? When people are like... It's just so, like, wide scoping without actually really saying anything.
Well, oh no, because I actually disagree with you there, because I do think the TikToks, like, kind of invite class solidarity, like working class people being able to talk about their frustrations of not being able to create and stuff because they're constantly on the hustle is, like, very important to talk about, I think. And especially, like, maybe this feeds into the wider conversation of why people feel like pop culture is dead, but also it's like, I can't remember who it was, but like someone, or a lot of people at the Brits, for example, and a lot of people in award seasons have been like shouting out youth clubs and shouting out like how they became actors, like as in from like local drama thing. Oh, I think it's just because I've been watching Stacey Solomon and Joe Swash's reality show series, and he's talking about, how he grew up like dirt poor in Islington, and like all the kids on the estate just used to go to drama class on like the weekends because it was like somewhere for them to go. And then he got into drama school and everyone else was like wanting to go be in like the Shakespeare company and stuff. And he was like, my biggest dream was getting on EastEnders.
And I did it.
But I think it's like such a precedent point. Not that like, the next great thinker could be sitting in Burger King right now, but more just like that working class people are obviously not given the opportunity to even explore their creative pursuits. And like now we feel like culture is at a standstill, and we'll go into it because like we're seeing the same movies getting remade, we're seeing like the same songs played to us, we're seeing this, we're seeing that, and then when anything new does come out, it's like the person's a nepo.
Yeah.
Like obviously we try, in terms of polyester, I'm sure people that listen to this podcast, to seek out people that aren't like in the nepo or like in like the big like entertainment industry, industrial complex pipeline, but it's very difficult, and that's because opportunities aren't there. So I see her point, and also I think but big but it's such a it's like an empty statement to be like, where are the thinkers? It's like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
everyone's
I think that
thinking.
response to it is also just like I don't know, it just feels like a nothing, like it doesn't...
She just wanted to sound smart.
Not her, everyone.
Well, famously, most people would rather sound smart than stupid, I'd say.
Those are the thinkers.
They are the thinkers. And the thing is, we are all the thinkers. But it seems like... Also, I did see this thing, which I think was maybe a reason why we didn't do this whole episode on the Twigs thing, where it was like, guys, come on, learn how to catch on, because this resident advisor conference that happened ages ago. Like it happened like the week before your book came out, because Nadine was talking to me about it when I interviewed you for your book at the bookshop, and then it's only resurfaced now, like 2 months later, and everyone was like, she's got her trial with Shire coming up. Like,
yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, I think we have to be wary about shitting on her, even though she does repeatedly do very annoying things. Because it does just play into that wider scheme of the Amber Heard of it all.
And I think it also, don't know, there's an elitist component of being like, oh, we're at this music conference where people will probably spend loads of money to go to then say something.
But I think there are great thinkers as well. That's what's winding me up. Shah just went to see Slavoj Žižek in the fucking Barbican. Do you know what I mean?
We just had Judith Butler on Trash Talk.
Exactly, and I understand that they're old, but then we need to like nurture younger people who are great thinkers as well. And I think that we are in a place where it's more accessible to do that. Like you don't have to be like a academic writer or something to break through those things. Like people are using social media, they're using platforms like Medium and Substack to get their voices across.
Well, there was a really good point about that in this Atlantic piece. So basically the writer is like, the thesis of the piece is that, it feels like we're at a standstill in culture, like nothing is moving forward. So he goes through like different schools of thought as to why that could be, and like using history and this writer/theorist called Ted Gioa, and like how it can like kind of trace the death of civilization like across different civilizations. And he looks at basically what happened in the Roman Empire and if we can like map it onto what's happening now. So like the first one is like stagnation, which is that like basically, everyone, like I'm sure most people know what stagnation means, like a slowing down of new interesting things being put out. The evidence for this is that like in 2024, new releases accounted for little more than a quarter of the albums consumed in the US, which was a fact that like we pulled out on a different podcast that I can't remember exactly properly, but it was that all the songs in the like UK top 10 had been out for more than a year. And this was like not necessarily songs that had charted for more than a year. Like, it's not like how Mr. Brightside is always in the top 40 or whatever. This was like songs that had become latecomer viral hits. So like Pink Pony Club, the Lola Young song, like all of these things that have been basically rocketed through virality rather than, which I think is like an interesting case that doesn't really get put forward in here. It's not necessarily that people aren't discovering things, it's that they're discovering them later perhaps, or like the traditional pop industry machine, obviously we all know it doesn't work. Like, radio isn't the thing it used to be. Like, our discovery is so different that obviously the charts reflect that, but it's been used as this kind of like very big like tentpole case of like we are stagnating. And then there was like, let me get it up, there was a YouGov essay. So according to a recent YouGov poll, Americans rate the 2020s as the worst decade in a century for music, movies, fashion, TV and sports. A 2023 story in the New York Times declared that we're in the least innovative, least transformative, and least pioneering century for culture since the invention of the printing press. And then The Guardian have also said that the avant-garde is dead.
So up your arse, though.
Well, they talk about this as well, how it's like very, how even when writing this piece, he was like, I know that like a lot of people like this can be generational and just like, old man shakes fist at cloud.
It's so generational. I'm not being funny. Like, there's a bit in here where someone's like talking about how streaming changed the way that we consume media, and I was reading it and I was going, yeah, bro, you're right. Like, binge watching, that's fucked everything up. But I'm sure people said the same thing when videos were invented. I'm sure people said the same thing when fucking films were shown in the cinemas for longer than a day, or when you could watch it when films went from being silent. Like, media's always changed, and I think like we also do need to be aware of that. I think like binge watching isn't necessarily a good thing, but I also think that it does really easily slip into that old man shakes fist at cloud. I remember years and years ago, I can't remember what it's in, but someone was like it might have been a Tumblr post, someone's referencing like where in like the ancient Roman times where someone's like, the kids don't know how fucking can't like learn or like imbibe culture properly anymore because the art of inscribing shit in stone has gone. People like always want to like shit on like the new ways that people consume things, and I think like we do also have to be wary of, we're stagnating ourselves in that way.
No, I mean, I think this piece is like extremely comprehensive in that it makes like a lot of different arguments, but I think at the center of all of these arguments, so one of them is stagnation, one of them is cynicism. So it's basically like he goes and meets with Dean Kissick, who's an art critic, and this is like definitely the part of it's a loads of opinions, so I'm not saying I agree with all of them basically. So he goes meets with Dean Kissick, who takes him around like all the New York art galleries, and there's like a central theme in that like all of these privatized galleries are showing works by marginalized artists that are making work about being marginalized. And Dean saying that it's like the flattening of the art industry because they're trying to sell this like one global oppression rather than actually like digging into like anything interesting. It's basically like art. He says that like art is like, you know, like buying a sofa for a rich person. That's what all these galleries do. That's what they've always done. Let's be honest. And it's just like now it's like, and he's like, his whole thing is that like woke or unwoke is a boring argument. Like culture wars are an interesting part of like 2020's living, but they're not like the part, like the pivotal thing, or even if they are, it's like, it's just a reflection of like our society being so individualized. Like usually art is about like searching for greater meaning or searching for whatever, like searching outwards, but now everything is about kind of like looking inwards, which I don't necessarily agree with, but it's an interesting point. And then I'm just going to like speed through all of them. And then the second point is isolation. So that basically the internet has made it so we're all just like individuals living in our houses doing things by ourselves, and that you don't actually require connection to make art anymore. So the case study in this section is Grimes's ex-girlfriend, Jamie Brooks. Do you remember? It was like her Tumblr era girlfriend.
Yeah.
And how like she lived in LA with Grimes, obviously, and then packed it all up, has moved to like rural Canada and is trying to like get more into community radio and stuff, but she's not making music. She's like, I think the way we make music now is antithetical to how music should be made. Like, historically, you know, it's like get round a campfire and like
a campfire,
like
get in the studio,
tap a rock.
No, No, I think it's get in the studio and smoke a blunt.
Yeah, but even way back to cavemen, it's like tap a rock and like do a little folk chant and stuff. Do you know?
Oh, that's so funny.
It's true.
That's where your mind went when you're reading that. I was like, oh, she means like the 70s when everyone would like rack loads of lines up and like write the best tune ever. And you're like, no, Gina, imagine.
The caveman.
Yeah. Imagine being the first caveman to tap his phone.
Well, it's true. And Jamie is saying that basically because now you don't have to have a person, like she's saying she moved to LA and she thought it'd be like, oh, amazing, like around so many peers, like doing this, doing that, but all you kind of find is like producers living in their houses, sitting in tiny rooms in them, Uber Eatsing, because they don't have to be with someone. They can just like send a stem to someone else, and then they can send like a bit of something to someone else. You can write remotely, you can do all of this, and it's just like a fake intimacy, I guess, and that's why it's the death of culture, because we're not actually talking to each other apparently. And then it seems like it goes into just like they're the main three things.
I think that's really interesting though. Like...
Oh wait, no, sorry, I found another one. Acceleration. So they're saying that basically things have accelerated too quickly, and that like there's this kind of common misconception, which I think is like true, that this is a conception. I don't know if it's a misconception or just a conception, in that like everything has peaks and troughs, right? Like we always talk about it with feminism, like feminism comes in, it comes out.
Almost like a wave.
Almost like a wave, exactly. Well, it's called a wave for a reason, that's all I'll say. And a lot of people have the same opinion of like music or filmmaking, like, you know, there's lulls, there's highs, it works on like a 20-year cycle, trend cycle, whatever. But then this case study in here is basically with the journalist and critic Kiernan Price Reynolds, who is saying that it's a fallacy, because basically since our grandparents were born, we've seen like music accelerate in such a way, like sheet music be invented, to then the invention of music as a business and record labels, to then what we're seeing now. Like it's such a fast acceleration that you can't assume that it's regenerative in any way. It could just like move on to be the next thing, which is AI slop, basically. Like we're going to have like chill beats made by AI, we're going to have like lift music made by AI, like just the humanity taken out of it. And that's one of them. And then I think it's just the author's thoughts after that. And with that, should we go to a break and then we'll have our thoughts?
We're back from the break with our thoughts.
We are back from the break and we have thoughts.
I think it's interesting to talk about it being an acceleration that's like continuing to just gather speed, and we're in like the end bit of it now, where it's like gathers so much speed it either like crashes and burns or just continues on forever. Like speed, what's it called? Warp space. Because it kind of opposes what is in another article in the research that I found really interesting about streaming in The Guardian that Simon Reynolds wrote in 2019. And it's called Streaming Has Killed the Mainstream, the Decade That Broke Popular Culture. So this is kind of like before the 2020s have happened, essentially. And it's mainly talking about like Netflix and TV streaming. But I think it also applies here, because it's saying that the culture time has changed. That it's not that culture time used to be really set in like cycles. Like it used to be, you'd have a TV show, you'd get the next series the next year. That doesn't happen anymore. Also, the way that we consume TV is different. Like, you don't just sit down and watch it every night at this specific time. You can watch it whenever at your leisure. And then the quote that I found really interesting was, instead of inviting consumers to tune into a shared cultural experience at a designated time, they encourage individualized trajectories through teeming repositories of art and entertainment. Slowly but surely, streaming is killing the idea of the mainstream. And I think that's interesting, because it kind of like takes it. It's not saying that it's speeding along, it's saying that it's fractured into like everyone's just got like their own timelines that they it's like engage with culture now. And I think that also ties back to what you were saying and reading about the like individuality of it. Like pop culture hasn't got that like moving force of like having to be a part of it at a specific time, and like it being the one thing that everyone's talking about the
I would
water
disagree,
cooler.
though. I think there's so much water cooler things now. Like I feel like that might have felt like true in the early years of streaming, but then I feel like now we've obviously been craving communal experiences or whatever, but I feel like it becomes more of a monoculture, like more of just like we're craving that so much that it becomes a slop culture, because we're like all watching, for example, everyone knows that I watch a lot of telly. Well,
that's why I think we're coming out of different things, because I watch fuck all.
And then this is the first year I haven't watched loads of telly, right? So I've skipped out on loads of like the big shows that like White Lotus, haven't watched it. Last of Us, like both all of these things I've tried to watch like 2 episodes and been like no, which is also very unlike me. And Severance, like I was trying to watch it like 2 weeks behind, but like the pace of social media means that like you're forced to strap in or get off because, for example, whereas before or like you can still do this with old stuff, which is maybe why it's more inviting to people. Before you'd just be able to like watch it within the week or whatever, but now you're immediately spoiled on like these huge plot points of TV shows, whether you want to or not, or like no matter how much you hide. And also everyone will know I'm famously like pro spoilers, but it's ruined my life this year.
But, well, I think that that's your karma.
Okay,
being
cool.
pro spoiler.
Cool. But I think, yeah, you're like forced to engage in this kind of like communal culture. And it means that we have culture on a very like macro level. We have big cultural strides that we all understand. And these touch points that become viral that we can all say that become like memed moments. But we aren't building like the very like minor culture that really like builds into like subculture and all of these things. Like a lot of this article is talking about, you know, like in all of these like waves of pop culture, if they do exist, a breaking point comes from like a saturation. So then once we're too saturated with one thing, whether it's like Elvis and rock and roll or whether it's like, you know, like hippies or whether it's whatever, right in the underground, other people are working to like bring the next thing to the fore, basically. But now, yeah, I think where the fractures happen is that it's in the bottom rather than like in the top. So less subculture is being made because we can be less unified because we're away from each other all the time and we're deprived of resources. Like the people that traditionally make subculture happen aren't being afforded any opportunities because it's going to like middle and upper class people. And now it's harder to monetize. And this is another really key point of this article, is that the arts have obviously to some degree always, but the arts have like really come under corporatization in the last 20 years, I guess. But recently with music, for example, with all of the like buying of catalogs, with film, like all of the like VC funds and like tech trying to get into like owning intellectual property and like developing TV and stuff. So our taste is being dictated to us by like old white Republican disgusting men, and they're controlling like all the capital basically, and none of us have money, so none of us are giving each other money and we can't do anything. That's it. We're at stalemate.
I think we're not, though. I think there's an underground. It's just not something that we...
No, there is, but it's not unified. It's not unified and it's not funded, and it's like you can still find community, and like obviously hopefully we've got a community and we've got all of this, but I just don't think there is opportunity.
There never was, though.
Varying degrees of that, I would say.
I think there was like a blossom of like really huge like efforts put into that when we were younger, and we're listening that now, but I think it was a blip in the system rather than like, oh, it used to be easier. I think it's easier now to be part of a subculture.
Yeah, because the entry point is so much lower, but as in like to actually innovate in a space is so much harder because like everything requires money. Whereas like, for example, even when we grew up, it's like you could have social media, you could have loads of tools for free, you could pirate tools, you could like do all of these things, and now we have the illusion of that without any of the actual like resources to do it, if that makes sense.
Maybe in a physical space, but I think on like an internet space it's more varied than ever. I think there is the argument that like on traditional internet platforms like Twitter, like every fifth tweet is a porn tweet. Maybe Instagram, the algorithm fucks you, you get shadow banned if you try to talk about anything you care about. But I think like to say that it's all gone shit isn't true. I think there's like people really actively and interestingly using spaces on the internet like us.
Yeah, I'm not saying
to change that. I think like it's one of the things that like we can't just be like, oh, we give up on subculture.
No.
Being something that has got a wider impact. I think like it is that, like you said, it's in waves, and we need to like nourish that underground movement.
No, I think that like I agree and disagree with you in that like there is still loads of interesting things happening on the internet and off the internet, but also by being obsessed with like the corporatization of all arts, like whether it's actual art and you're saying that like your work exists just to hang in like a rich person's house, or like music, like Grimes's ex is basically saying, I'm not going to make music anymore because I put it on a streaming platform and I'm just making money for someone else. Or it's film, and yeah, you have to like make the Kool-Aid film
from the studio
to do anything. I've lost my point, but I just feel like everyone feels like quite bottlenecked at the moment, and like we all feel like nothing, like there's no tangible things. And I don't think it's true either, because like even this man at the end of the article, maybe it's just because I've just read this article.
Yeah,
as
you're
well.
going ham for this article.
Oh, sorry, I thought that's what the podcast was on.
Yeah, there's other stuff.
That yeah, there is other research, and it's basically saying that also all good art, or like art that we consider to be revolutionary, has come from like a maximalist mindset. And not maximalist as in like money, maximalist as in like trying to communicate like big feelings, big thoughts, trying to get the most of something into a space. And I feel, and that the reason why it feels so hard right now is because the economic situation we're in is so restricted. So even if you want to make something like super maximalist in terms of like sound, we have all these tools, but we don't have the opportunity to capitalize on them ourselves, basically. So it feels like, yeah, we're not using it. Like,
Yeah,
and then
even in terms of like time to sit down and do it.
exactly. And like, obviously there's like good examples of this, and we laughed at this when we read it, but like, he says Terry Joe, and like I think comedy is actually such a good example of that. Like people that can take a format that people find restrictive, like TikTok, and actually make it like artistic and fruitful, and like, what's it called? Like not revolutionary, but you know what I mean. Maybe revolutionary. Who can say? It's saying like Pink Panthers is also a really good example of this. Blah 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 blah. But I think in general there's like a reason it feels really hard.
Yeah, I think that my problem, I guess, with mourning the death of pop culture is that like we don't need to see that pop culture as symbolic of
Culture.
No,
exactly. Like I agree with you. Like I think there's always been a monoculture and subculture. Like there's always been a popular culture and an underground culture, but it's within like the algorithm's interests, streaming people's interests, Spotify's interest, or like music streaming, TV streaming, that we do all only listen to the same things, because then we have like a fake sense of connection with each other, and it's like a stand-in for us actually finding real connection in like niche communities, which we have.
I think a lot of the time with subculture as well, it doesn't become like something that's known loads about until it breaks into the mainstream. And I think like we're kind of being like, there's no subculture at the minute, and then in like 5 years we'll be like, oh, all this shit was happening.
I think there's loads of subculture. Like I think we can see it all around us. We write about it all the time. We do all of this. And then also, this is my other thing, is that like a lot of these people that say, and also these people like Grimes's ex in this are like actually trying to force their own culture. Like these are people that haven't given up necessarily. I'd say the only one is that Dean Kissick, who's like overly pessimistic about things. And to that, I just say, that's media people that only look at media things. Like, you complain there's no culture, where you're all reading the same 5 things all the time, you're all listening to the same 5 things, drinking the same 5 drinks, and going to
what are they?
eating the same 5 foods, and going to the same 5 parties. So like, why are you, like, media's always been obsessed with its own echo chamber, and how are you gonna, evolve if you're just all talking to each other all the time?
Exactly.
Find other people to talk to.
I think
which goes back to Twigs.
My final point, I guess, is that for the creators in subculture communities, the way for those to be successful is to try and not definitely foster community, but not have that like necessarily be your goal as an artist or a creative. I think like you shouldn't be trying. We've been trained now that like our culture or our art or our creativity is only worth something if it's successful. And I don't think that was always the like point of view, like even being more niche, even in the 90s, like the more niche you could be, the better it was. And now people are like trying to do the opposite.
Yeah, just like court mass adoration all the time.
Yeah, and I think social media is definitely like imbued that into us, like trying to please algorithms has imbued that into us, and it is disheartening when you're like, I'm creating this work, I know people will respond to it, but the algorithm's making it so nobody sees it. I think we have to reframe that as being like, I'm making this work, whoever does get to see it will get the most out of it. Bish bash bosh.
There can be 100 people in a room.
And only one Bradley Cooper.
Exactly. And you just need to find your Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, if I wrote one beautiful poem and one person said to me, this beautiful poem has really touched me, I'd go, that's enough for me.
Yeah, we always say it. Imagine X amount of people in a room.
Yeah,
that's
we
loads.
say it in our comment section. We're like, 27 comments, imagine 27 people in a room.
Loads.
Buzzing. You got 300 followers, imagine 300 people in a room.
Crazy.
Imagine that.
Hate it.
Love it. Mwah. Mwah. But yeah, I think like the conversation with culture just needs. Let's not mourn.
I don't think it's about mourning.
Let's be positive about the future of it.
I think it's not even about like mourning. Yeah, bemoaning a death obviously is like the theme, but there's no death. It's just that like we're all lazy as well because we're all time poor and like searching for enrichment. So it's on us to like seek out things that actually enrich us, not just that fill the void.
That's why I deleted TikTok last year.
And I got locked out of my Twitter account and I'm not going back in.
I know. I think I don't know. I think that it's kind of just setting those restrictions on yourself as well. Like, we're all adults who try and pretend that like we're slaves to the algorithm, but we also do have like the choice to just not get involved in that.
Yeah, and I also think even like on TikTok, not on Twitter, there's still interesting things. Would you like me to read the end of this article? Culture is not just a map of the structures and forces that order society. It's what people make on top of it, in between it, in opposition to it, and in collaboration with it. We all have the power to listen more curiously, look more closely, and treat the present with the same sense of generosity that we extend to the golden ages of the past.
Also, sorry, I know we're running over, but when people try and have like an honest subculture, people are snarky little cunts about it.
No, yeah, exactly.
When people are trying to like be earnestly being like oppositional to like the monolith.
Yeah, and that's
people
how we
like,
get like everything
balance.
we've got now.
Exactly. So wise up.
No, I was speaking about this. So I saw this tweet. I think it's so true. Well, it's kind of actually the opposite of what you said. But it was like a tweet that was basically like, to have good culture, we need to have good criticism. Like, if we just accept a culture in which we can't criticize anything.
This is
like,
what Fran Lebowitz says.
Yeah, you can't criticize a film. You can't criticize an album. Thinking of our Brat episode here. You can't criticize like a music video. Then fine. We're resigning ourselves to slop. We're resigning ourselves to not having taste. We're resigning ourselves to existing in this monoculture. By existing either in opposition or in earnest support of, you're making a point of the world and the culture you want to look at. And like, we need both of those things to exist.
Yeah, Fran Lebowitz says that when it was the AIDS epidemic, all the like people that died are the people who were obviously like people who were like a massive laugh, going to loads of parties, like and booing themselves in loads of culture, and those are the people that died from it. And then we were left with people who weren't so critical, and that's like why stuff turned to slop. And we're doing the same thing now by creating a culture where people can't be critical.
Yeah, tell them.
That's the answer. But we'll bring back pop culture when you bring back pop criticism.
We're doing pop criticism in the here and now, single-handedly.
Just us.
No, there are others. There are others.
And if I disagree with you, I don't care.
It's okay to disagree.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
We should be celebrating. We should be celebrating each other's disagreements.
We should be happy to be arguing.
Exactly. And with that,
let's wrap it up. Yeah.
Sorry, Olivia, we blathered on. But thank you so much for the edit.
Thank you, Olivia, for the edit. Thank you, Zakia, for the impeccable research.
The really extensive research from Zakia this week.
And thank you to
Even
Gina.
though I only read one article.
I read all of it. I thought it had a lot of interesting points.
I know.
Also, it had that listen thing at the top, and it was 48 minutes, so it's quite a long article.
I'm just winding around. It's worked. Thank you, Zakia, for sound teching as well.
And thank you, Gina, for being my nasty co-host. Who's so
thank you,
nasty.
Ione, who I love to disagree with because it keeps pop culture alive. And thank you to you for listening, and thank you to all our subscribers. You're our favourites out of all the listeners.
We will see you next week. Bye-bye.